This is a 40-year campaign, and this year our network is mobilizing around the theme Safe Products, Confident Consumers. And of course, to inform this conversation, we have brought a quick timeline for you. As you can see, since the 80s, Consumers International has acted in this subject. I would just mention that in 1982, we led a global campaign against toxic pesticides, mobilizing 300 plus organizations across 50 countries. And more recently, we have partnered with OECD and UNCTAD to work closely and support the development, for example, of the new UN principles on consumer product safety, and to have better international coordination and collaboration on this theme. We've also surveyed our members on the lead up for our conversations today, and some numbers that certainly stand out are that between these 55 responses we had from 45 countries, 85% say product safety systems work poorly or only partially. 93% identify online marketplaces as a major new risk, and 89% say cross-border cooperation on product safety remains limited. So today we joined all of you together for a great session with great speakers, and I'm very pleased to hand over to our moderator for this session, Helena Laurent, Director General of Consumers International. Helena, the floor is yours.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Erico. Excellencies, honorable ministers, Deputy Secretary General of the OECD, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's an absolute pleasure and privilege to welcome us all together with the broader community joining from around the world to celebrate and recognize World Consumer Rights Day. As Erico mentioned, each year, Consumers International and our global network of consumer organizations in more than 100 countries mark World Consumer Rights Day as a global moment of action to advance and to protect consumer rights. Each year, we focus on the leading challenges for people as consumers in the marketplace. And for 2026, we chose Safe Products, Confident Consumers. Why? Why did we focus on this? Well, in today's global and increasingly digital marketplace, product safety still remains and increasingly is a critical and urgent issue for us all. It affects lives, it undermines consumer trust, it imposes significant social, economic, and environmental costs. Evidence shows us that unsafe and recalled products remain widely available across markets, while many countries still lack sufficiently robust legal and regulatory frameworks to protect consumers from harm. And unsafe products disproportionately impact consumers in vulnerable circumstances and in low-income countries. They can cause serious public health and development challenges. They contribute to pollution and the waste of valuable resources, reinforcing the need, as all of our consumer advocates see it, just as you've seen just now, the need for systemic, preventive, and globally coordinated approaches to safety. This year, Consumers International is calling on all actors to step up their efforts to strengthen consumer product safety across the full product lifecycle, from design and production to distribution, use, and end of life. The 2026 campaign focuses on 4 pillars, which include raising awareness and understanding of the importance of product safety. It's often forgotten and under invested in. Second, collaboration, so that safety is upheld at every stage of the product life cycle. Third, robust cross-border safety systems, so that innovation is used for effective innovation sharing, information sharing, the coordination of product recalls, and for the effective enforcement of policy and practice. And finally, unified global standards and regulatory frameworks. I'm really thrilled to be joined here with experts, practitioners, leaders from all walks of life to tell us how we can make that happen and why this is such an important global theme. First, if I may call on the Right Honourable Kate Dearden, MP. She is Minister for Employment and Consumer Protection in the United Kingdom. Minister, absolute pleasure to have you with us. Thank you so much. The UK has recently adopted the Product Regulation and Metrology Act. Can you tell us what drove you to adopt this and what lessons we can learn from it?
Thank you so much, Helena, for that question, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here with you today to join this virtual session as part of World Consumer Rights Day. Particularly pleased, of course, to hear that the theme for this year is Safe Products, Confident Consumers. And the fact that we have all come together to share our experiences of protecting consumers from product-related harm speaks to our shared commitment to tackling the challenges that we face in today's world of constantly developing technology and increasingly complex supply chains and rapidly rising e-commerce. This is something I'm absolutely committed to as the Minister for Consumer Protection. In fact, I'm committed to prioritising and delivering meaningful long-term reforms for consumers across all sectors of the economy, ensuring that consumers not only have comprehensive rights in principle, but that they feel confident that these rights are understood and enforced effectively in practice. I'm also committed to economic growth, and growth is this government's primary goal, and economic growth is the most reliable path to increasing wages, living standards, and generally improving people's quality of life. And our government, the UK government's modern industrial strategy, will create the right environment for businesses to innovate, invest, and grow, and crucially, that includes cutting unnecessary bureaucracy. We've set an ambitious cross-government target to reduce the cost of regulation by 25%, and that's set to save businesses nearly £6 billion a year. But we must pursue growth responsibly and in a way that keeps people safe. We need to ensure that consumers are protected from risks, and this is especially true when it comes to product safety. It's the feature of the modern world that e-commerce, that sometimes consumer harms emerge from malign, irresponsible, or unscrupulous sources. And the fast-paced way these bad actors react and adapt to the regulatory system can make it difficult for regulators to keep up. And I thought I'd share a real-life example of this, which is lithium-ion batteries, which are found in many products, including e-bikes and e-scooters. Last month, I personally met with two women who sadly lost a loved one in a fire caused by battery in a converted e-bike. So I'm very aware that the consequences of unsafe products can be catastrophic. So how are we in the UK addressing these challenges? Well, as you mentioned, last year we passed the Product Regulation and Metrology Act, which gives us new powers to modernise the regulatory framework. We know that the existing framework has been stretched to its limit by increasingly globalised supply chains and the ever-changing way in which consumers buy products as well. So the new framework must address the issues of today and be prepared to deal with the challenges of tomorrow. So while there is existing relevant regulation in the UK, this one in particular is one of many areas where the market has begun to outpace the rules and enforcement powers. And that's why we've taken measures so that regulation and regulators can get back ahead of the game to protect consumers and ultimately and often save lives. So you asked, Helena, what the next steps are. We will consult shortly on proposals to major reforms to the product safety legislative framework to ensure that it protects consumers and enables businesses to innovate and to grow. And we're focusing on our efforts on developing a framework that tackles real issues. 2/3 of global e-commerce sales now pass through online marketplaces, so it's really essential that government, regulators and industry work together on raising standards, on supporting sellers and protecting consumers. And the consultation that we'll launch will include proposals to strengthen protections for consumers, and that includes new requirements for online marketplaces that will clarify and modernise their responsibilities and create a level playing field for those businesses who abide by the law. We'll also consult on a common enforcement toolbox to make it simpler for both businesses and for regulators. And consultation is, of course, a really vital part of this process. Getting the core framework right will bring immediate improvements to consumer safety and businesses. But this is a marathon and not a sprint. We need to make sure that we are listening to stakeholders and taking on board all of the evidence that we need to make the correct decisions. So with the help of consumer groups and through business engagement, we are shaping the necessary reforms. In addition to the engagement that my officials are carrying out, I've personally already met with a number of organisations with an interest in consumer protection, as well as with individuals who have mentioned already who have directly experienced product-related harm. And we will continue to work closely with stakeholders to develop our vision for the future and develop the wide infrastructure that contributes to our product safety regime, including those standards and accreditation, as well as legislation. We all have a role to play in safeguarding consumers. International collaboration is more important than ever in an increasingly online world of global supply chains and events like this that enable all of us to share ideas, best practice and research. So I'm really delighted to be here, and thank you again for inviting me to be part of your World Consumer Rights Day celebration. I hope that, Helena, has answered your question, but thank you again for having me and providing me with the opportunity to talk about everything we're doing in the United Kingdom and the legislation that we're focused on.
Thank you so much, Minister Dearden. It's an absolute pleasure to have you with us, and thank you for your championship, which is well noted, of consumer rights and consumer issues and people in the marketplace. It's absolutely fantastic to see. I'd love to switch now to another champion for consumer rights now from Costa Rica. Her Excellency Patricia Rojas Morales is joining us as Minister for Economy, Industry and Commerce in her country, Costa Rica. And Costa Rica was one of the first 6 countries, which then expanded to many more, that sponsored originally the recent United Nations resolution on global principles for consumer product safety. It reflects the country's commitment to strengthening international frameworks in this area. So thank you and congratulations. I'd love to ask you, Minister, sort of what do you see as the barriers, but also how can international frameworks go beyond and become beyond principles to practical tools that support countries at different stages of regulatory development? Welcome, and the floor is yours.
There we go. Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation to participate in this important discussion and for creating this space to reflect on this very important issue that has becoming increasingly central to consumer protection, product safety. In a world where markets are more interconnected and digital than ever before, ensuring that products are safe has become a global challenge. Today, consumer purchases products that may be designed in one country and manufactured in another and sold through digital platforms and operate across multiple jurisdictions. This new reality requires us to rethink how we build effective product safety systems. Costa Rica had the honor of being one of the 6 countries that have co-sponsored the recent United Nations resolution on global principles for consumer product safety. This initiative reflects our commitment to strengthening international consumer protection frameworks and to promoting safer markets. Based on our experience, I would like to share some ideas. The first relates to the institutional and capacity gaps that many countries still face, particularly smaller economies and emerging markets. Building an effective product safety system requires clear regulatory frameworks, technical capacity for market surveillances, risk assessment mechanisms, and a strong coordination among public authorities. However, in many cases, these capacities are still underdeveloped. At the same time, the growing expansion of e-commerce allows products from anywhere in the world to reach consumers more easily, which further complicates oversights and enforcement by nations' authorities. My second idea concerns the importance of strengthening international cooperation. No country can address product safety challenges alone in a global marketplace. In this context, improving mechanisms for information sharing is essential. For example, developing a global and unified database of alerts on dangerous products would allow regulatory authorities to share critical information in real time, detect risk more quickly, and take preventive action before unsafe products cause harm to consumers in other markets. And in third place, my concerns are the importance of partnership. Ensuring product safety is not solely the responsibility of the governments. It also requires the active involvement of market actors, manufacturers, distributors, and increasingly online marketplace and digital platform play a crucial role in ensuring that the products are placed in the market meet appropriately safety standards. These platforms have a unique capacity to detect, remove, or block unsafe products quickly and effectively, making their cooperation essential for strengthening prevention and response systems. At the same time, we must recognize the key role played by society, consumer education, and the strengthening of civil society organizations are essential elements of effective product safety systems. Informed consumers and active consumer organizations help detect risk, report unsafe products, and promote greater transparency in the marketplace. In this context, the new United Nations guidelines of consumer product safety represent a very important step forward. These guidelines not only establish key principles, but also provide a framework that can help countries strengthen their regulatory systems, build international capacity, and promote international cooperation. The challenge now is to move from these principles to implementation. This means translating these global frameworks into practical tools that can support countries and different stages of regulatory development. It also requires promoting knowledge sharing, technical assistance, and capacity building initiatives that allows all countries to strengthen their product safety systems. At the end, ensuring product safety is essential for building trust in the marketplace. And consumers' trust is fundamental for dynamic, fair, and sustainable economies. For this reason, Costa Rica reaffirms its commitment to working together with the international community, consumer organizations, the private sector, and digital platforms to strengthen product safety system and ensure that consumers everywhere have access to safe products. Thank you very much, and happy Consumer International Day.
Thank you so much, Minister. I really appreciate your presence, your perspective, your leadership in driving that, the resolution, and three very important ideas, which I think we should pick up. Let's see how much we can do of that together in the coming year. We need speed and urgency. You mentioned, of course, the United Nations Trade and Development Agency, an absolutely crucial and central part of the international architecture on consumer policy, which doesn't really receive enough attention globally. I'm delighted that we can welcome also here the OECD. The OECD has played a very important role in advancing international cooperation, likewise on consumer product safety, including its recommendation on consumer product safety, ongoing work on online marketplaces, enforcement cooperation, and emerging risks. We're absolutely delighted to welcome Mr. Yasushi Masaki, who is the Deputy Secretary General at the OECD. And I'd love to ask your perspective as in your international role. How do you see, how can we help governments? How can we help stakeholders adapt these product safety frameworks so that, and how do we take advantage of new technologies so that we can do good for consumers? The world is full of discussion about AI. What might that do to advance product safety, for example? Mr. Masaki, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Helena. But before answering your questions, I'd like to express my great pleasure to join you and the other distinguished speakers in celebrating World Consumer Rights Day. The OECD has a long history of supporting policymakers with evidence, standards, and practical guidance to strengthen product safety. Given time constraints, let me focus on two key areas where our work is especially relevant today. First, online product safety. E-commerce has brought enormous convenience to consumers, but it has also created a direct pipeline from factories across the globe to our doorsteps, sometimes with limited oversight and fewer safety checks. The volume of products available for sale on online marketplaces raises significant challenges for product safety authorities. In response, several jurisdictions have developed product safety pledges, and a growing number of online marketplaces have committed to them. Building on OECD policy guidance on consumer product safety pledges, such commitments should deliver in three areas. First, they should ensure that unsafe products are removed quickly and do not simply reappear online. Second, they should help third-party sellers comply with product safety rules. And third, they should give consumers clear ways to report unsafe listings and access recall information. But removal of unsafe products online is only part of the challenge. Once a product has already been purchased, the challenge becomes how to ensure that consumers respond to calls. Here, OECD's work shows that consumer reactions to product recalls often remain low. In many cases, notices are too difficult to understand, or consumers underestimate the risks. To address this, the OECD has developed tools to improve recall effectiveness. These include guidance to strengthen consumer responses, global awareness campaigns, and international data sharing tools. One example is a global campaign, lithium-ion battery safety, launched at the 2024 OECD Consumer Policy Ministerial Meeting. We also maintain the OECD Global Recalls Portal, which brings together over 54,000 recall notices from more than 50 jurisdictions to help governments, businesses, and consumers track safety issues around the world. Let me now turn to my second point, the safety of products that incorporate digital technologies. Consumers are increasingly using products such as connected appliances, wearable health monitors, automated vehicles, AI chatbots, humanoid robots, and virtual reality devices. These technologies can improve safety in important ways. They can support predictive maintenance, detect hazards earlier, and allow vulnerabilities to be fixed through remote software updates rather than through physical recall. At the same time, they introduce new risks that traditional product safety frameworks were not designed to address. A product safety may now change after purchase through software updates. Connectivity failures may disable features that are critical for safe use. And some products may create new health risks, including mental health risks, for example, through unsafe interactions with AI chatbots. In such cases, children, older persons, and other vulnerable groups may be particularly exposed. An upcoming OECD report on consumer health and safety impacts of digital technology products highlights several ways policymakers can respond. These include reviewing existing product safety laws and standards to identify needed updates, promoting safety by design with businesses, improving regulators' technical expertise, and strengthening cross-regulatory cooperation. That last point is especially important as these issues do not stop at the boundary of product safety policy. They also touch on consumer protections, online safety, AI governance, cybersecurity, and health policy. That means regulators must increasingly work across disciplines and across borders. There is also a more positive side to this story. AI is not only part of the challenge, it can also be part of the solutions. Authorities and businesses are already using AI tools, including image recognition and machine learning, to detect unsafe products more quickly and at greater scale. They are also analyzing online reviews and other signals to flag unsafe products and to identify potential risks that human inspectors alone could easily miss. At the OECD, we are helping to advance this work. We have launched a survey of consumer and product safety authorities to better understand how AI is already being used for policy and enforcement, and to identify good practices that could be shared more widely. Underlying all of this is one foundational priority: better data. We are exploring how to further refine the global records portal so that it can better monitor and detect emerging consumer risks, including those linked to AI products or to mental health. And we are also examining how it could connect more closely with the OECD AI Incidents Monitor so that product records can be understood within the broader landscape of AI incidents. Protecting consumers and strengthening their trust will require action on several fronts. Modernizing laws where appropriate, encouraging business to build safety from the start, and deepening international cooperation. The tools are available. The evidence is growing. What is needed now is a collective will to act. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Deputy Secretary General. We appreciate those important messages, and we note very much that point about information and data. That also the way in which we understand product safety is changing rapidly, and we need to be up to speed with that and regulation needs to be, and practice needs to be in line with the needs of people in a safer market. With this, let me pass the floor to Isabelle Perignon. Isabelle is our Director for Consumers at the European Commission. The European Commission has put in place a number of changes recently, including the Global Product Safety, the General Product Safety Regulation, excuse me. Madame Perignon, I would love your perspective on how we turn principles into practice, and perhaps some of your learnings about how to drive cross-border improvements, including in enforcement. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Elena, for your invitation. So from the European Commission's perspective, turning strong principles on paper into credible guarantees in practice really starts with the robust legislative framework. And the rules must be clear, they must be comprehensive, and they must leave no holes in the net. So you mentioned the key instrument in this framework, which is the General Product Safety Regulation. And this regulation became applicable already in December 2024. And it helps and it plays a role of a safety net for consumer products in the European Union. Its purpose is to ensure that all products sold to consumers in the European Union are covered by a comprehensive legal framework when they are not already regulated by sector-specific legislation. So crucially, it also ensures that authorities can always take action when a product proves to be unsafe. Having no holes in the net also means that when something goes wrong, authorities and consumers must always be able to identify and contact a responsible economic operator. So this is why the regulation introduced an obligation for products sold to consumers in the European Union to have a responsible person established in the European Union. Another important lesson concerns the product recalls. So experience has shown that recalls often fail to protect consumers as effectively as they should, because many consumers simply do not know what the product they own has been recalled, or even if they are informed, the way recall notices are written can sometimes reduce the perceived seriousness of the risk. So for this reason, the new rules introduce stronger and more practical recall requirements. Businesses must now directly contact affected consumers whenever this is possible, and for example, when products were purchased online or when consumer information is available. At the same time, recall notices must contain clear and precise information without downplaying the risk. And the goal is simple. If a product is unsafe, consumers must clearly understand the risk and they must know exactly what to do. However, even the strongest rules are only as effective as their enforcement. And one of the most important lessons we can share is therefore that strong enforcement and cooperation between authorities is essential. Within the European Union, information exchange between authorities plays a crucial role in targeting market surveillance activities. So a key tool supporting this is a safety gate rapid alert system, which enables authorities to quickly share information about dangerous products and coordinate responses. In addition, in 2025, the EU coordinated the first EU-wide product safety sweep, which was bringing together all the market surveillance authorities across the member states to check compliance simultaneously. And we will continue with these coordinated efforts in the future. We also find great value in multilateral cooperation fora on product safety, such as the OECD, and in particular, the Working Party on Consumer Product Safety at the OECD, and the UNCTAD Working Group on Consumer Product Safety. A good example of this collaborative approach is a process that's led to the adoption of the UN principles on consumer product safety. Finally, effective product safety requires working closely with businesses, consumer organizations, and every 2 years we organize the International Product Safety Week, which is a great opportunity for all of us to learn from each other and exchange on current issues. And during that week, the International Symposium of ICFASO will bring many new insights on product safety. So I really warmly invite you all to attend the next edition of this International Product Safety Week. I will welcome you here in Brussels. That will take place from the 7th to 10th September in Brussels or online. So thank you, and again, happy World International Consumer Rights Day.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to have you with us, Isabel. Thank you for that kind invitation, which I'm sure everyone has taken note of. And let's all be ready to bring how we've advanced these ideas and product safety together to report out on so that we can show impact for you. Fantastic. Let's hear now. So we've started out this celebration and this focus on product safety with perspectives from policymakers, regulators, from those who are seeing this from a government perspective. I'm now going to turn now to a consumer advocate. So Anindita Mehta is the Chief Executive Officer of the Consumer Education and Research Center, or CERC, in India. She's also a board member of Consumers International. Anindita, share a little bit about how people are experiencing product safety now in your country and across the world. And looking perhaps to the future, how would you see the most important priorities to strengthen product safety? What can we do, and what can we be doing as consumer advocates? Anindita.
Thank you so much, Helena, for having me on this panel today with esteemed speakers. And a very happy World Consumer Rights Day to all here. From the perspective of a consumer organization in India, we act as a bridge between the struggling consumers and the regulatory bodies like our Bureau of Indian Standards or the Central Protection Agency. The regulatory gaps on the ground are not just legal technicalities, they are the real world hurdles that prevent justice, safety, and fairness. So I would just like to mention what these gaps look like on the ground. For example, there is an enforcement deficit, or we can say there's a paper tiger phenomenon here. There are robust standards, but the market is flooded with uncertified, counterfeit, or substandard products, particularly in the FMCG sector and electronics. Enforcement is weak. Slow enforcement and action, even when regulatory bodies identify say unsafe products or a misleading ad, the punitive action is often slow due to bureaucratic hurdles or allowing businesses to continue the practice for months, if not years. And there is inadequate monitoring. There is a lack of field level inspectors to monitor compliance, leaving enforcement reliant on consumer complaints rather than proactive surveillance. So now it's actually time to move from weak or fragmented product safety frameworks to meaningful consumer guarantees, which requires a shift from the reactive, reflex to seller-centric approaches to a proactive consumer-centric and harmonized regulatory systems. So there are other gaps as well on the ground. For example, on e-commerce, despite we having a new e-commerce rule which has just come in 2021, consumers still struggle with non-compliance of return, refund, and warranty policies by sellers, especially on third-party platforms. There are dark patterns and misleading ads, which consumers are frequently manipulated by dark pattern covered user interfaces and fake reviews on e-commerce and sites. So regulatory action, which is increasing, but has not kept pace with the rapid adoption of these techniques. Accountability of platforms is another issue. Marketplace e-commerce platforms often escape liability for faulty products by citing that they are just intermediaries, making it difficult for consumers to seek redress from the actual seller. So these are the regulatory gaps on the ground. Redressal mechanism bottlenecks are also there. There are overburdened consumer courts, though we have specific consumer courts which are there for consumers at three levels: the district, state, and the national commission. But despite a very robust Consumer Protection Act recently in 2019, the recent study which the CRC conducted, that over 40% of cases take more than 1 year to resolve, defeating the entire purpose of speedy justice. So that's very concerning for consumers. Then there are vacancies in commissions. A major gap is that the high number of vacancies of presidents and members in the district and state commissions. Now, another issue is that, the procedures have been modernized. There is AI, but the consumers and lack digital literacy, and they struggle to file online complaints, needing heavy intervention from local NGOs like CERC. Then there is, of course,
So,
low awareness. Yeah.
Just in 1 minute, could you share with me what are the 3 things you think should happen in the next year? Sorry to keep you going, just in interest of time.
Yeah. So I think we need to move from a seller-centric approach or from a reactive approach that consumers only come to us when they have a complaint, to a proactive and harmonized regulatory system. The need is to establish a general safety provision. We don't have a specific product safety, provision in India. These are all sector specific. Like for food, we have FSSAI. For standards, we have BIS. So, but we don't have a single regulatory product safety regulatory framework. We must adopt international standards, align domestic technical regulations with international safety standards, and modernize product liability laws, and strengthen the recall procedures, as well as the cross-border cooperation, utilize rapid alert systems like we have in the EU safety gate to share information about unsafe products across borders is important. And fostering business responsibility and compliance is another pathway. And ensuring meaningful redress and consumer empowerment, and addressing digital marketplace challenges. I think these are the measures we must take in the coming years to ensure that each and every consumer is protected and can access safe products.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Anindita. I'd like to pass now to Tareen Krepi. She is the president of Safe Kids Worldwide. Children and kids are often entirely disproportionately impacted by product safety issues. Can you share from your perspective and from your experience, what are the most pressing safety issues facing children today, and what would you see as the most effective and truly preventive product safety system that you would like to see advanced in the coming year?
Thank you, and welcome everyone, and I'm happy to be here for this symposium today. I think the primary product safety challenges facing children today is actually a confluence of issues, and ones that affect not just children, but all consumers. The nature of consumer commerce has evolved rapidly over the last 2 decades, while governments and policy-making bodies have struggled to keep up. Many are still just now grappling with how radically the e-commerce landscape has shifted. The EU passed its general product safety regulation and is working through some of the implementation hurdles. But in the United States, the Consumer Product Safety Commission authorizing legislation has been largely untouched since the 2000s and the passage of the Consumer Product Safety Improvement Act. Today, consumers shop across a whole range of different kinds of online marketplaces, including straightforward retailer websites, hybrid marketplaces that sell some products directly while also hosting third-party sellers, pure third-party marketplaces, and consumer-to-consumer platforms. And in the US, there remains a lack of clarity around critical questions posed by these developments, including in what circumstances should platforms be held legally responsible for faulty and hazardous products? We do many events here in the US, and we see some of those products coming through our safety fairs. What obligations should platforms have with regard to vetting potential third-party sellers and or the products they offer, which is a session that I often host at Safe Kids and globally around with our members. What expectations and obligations should sellers face depending on their size and nature, since this category might include small-scale artisans as well as drop shippers and resellers? While these critical questions are being worked out, we continue to see an influx of low-quality, often counterfeit goods that are non-compliant with critical safety standards into global commerce via online marketplaces. And we often ask ourselves, which types of products pose the greatest risks? And for children, the riskiest products are non-compliant, counterfeit, or defective items distributed as toys or other safety-sensitive children's products, like car seats. This danger is exacerbated by the fact that these products are often priced aggressively to appeal to unsuspecting or economically stretched parents and caregivers. Not only do these products put their end users at risk, they damage consumer confidence in marketplaces, and in the case of counterfeits, can harm the brand value of upstanding manufacturers who are trying to do right by their customers. So for us, we've taken some preventive risk anticipatory product safety systems look-alike. How can governments, businesses, civil society work together to ensure vulnerable consumers are protected first? And we like to consider our most precious are our children and our families who have to care for them. First, we like to have such a system will necessarily require cooperative information sharing by industry, government, consumers, and advocates. The tremendous scale of e-commerce and online marketplaces has stretched thin the capacity of regulatory and enforcement bodies while creating lucrative opportunities for bad actors. Systemic and proactive information sharing will be critical to track these bad actors across platforms, monitor techniques they use to gain and maintain access to platforms, consumer base, and detect emerging product hazards. The most vulnerable consumers and their families are typically stretched for time to do in-depth product research, so improving the availability and quality of product safety information can help. But we also need to be mindful of how aggressive pricing by bad actors can disproportionately expose vulnerable consumers. And I think that aspect points up the difference marketplaces can make by continuing in their efforts to identify and remove bad actors from their platforms. But I'll close by saying, in today's influencer age, public access to such documentation could help advocates improve the information environment families and caregivers navigate when shopping. Our goal at Safe Kids Worldwide is always how do we protect and prevent and share best practices and give information to those that need it the most. And that is our families and caregivers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Creppy. It's a pleasure having you with us and really appreciate your bringing your perspectives and the ideas and incorporating sort of how does the modern information system influence and be influenced as well. In interest of time, I'm going to go straight to David Kosnoff. He is and has been for many years the president of the International Consumer Product Health and Safety Organization, which is a fantastic network of global safety practitioners and industry leaders. I'd love your perspective on how do we help level the playing field for responsible businesses and strengthen consumer trust in the marketplace at the same time. What would you like to see in the year ahead?
Thank you, Helena. On behalf of ICFSO, we welcome the opportunity to speak on International Consumer Rights Day. For 33 years, ICFSO has represented stakeholders from all sectors of product safety. We provide a neutral platform for these stakeholders to come together and promote ways to improve product safety for everyone. And we invite you to join us in Brussels for our international symposium held in conjunction with International Product Safety Week, September 7th through 10th. From the perspective of global safety practitioners and industry leaders, commonly accepted best practices include early risk and hazard assessment, mitigation plans and ongoing manufacturing production control plans, testing programs, supplier qualification and evaluation processes, pre-market finished goods testing and/or certification followed by periodic retesting, post-market monitoring, and then service, repair, and take-back programs for end of life. Though I will mention that even the best programs may struggle with secondary markets as the number of unknowns can overcome even the most thought-through plans. For distributors, retailers, and/or e-commerce, it usually begins with selecting trustworthy business partners. The best practices include thorough due diligence and program evaluations. Many organizations, unfortunately, rely solely on contractual language to attempt to force suppliers to provide safe and compliant products. That is necessary, but it's not sufficient. Better practices include having their own testing programs, both pre-market and on shelf, pre-screening products on third-party marketplaces prior to listing. AI can help with some of this, but not all. To effectively run these types of programs, you really need to have people in the field working closely with suppliers, the factories, the labs, and the inspection services. If the organization is too small to have their own field team, it is imperative that they work with a trusted independent agent, and even then, there is no substitute for going to see the factories yourself. When you visit the factories, you need to get out on the floor, you need to see production being run, verify the correct materials and processes are being used, validate proper control gates are in place, and look for anything unusual. The best programs also actively monitor all channels for customer feedback, product reviews, social media posts, warranty claims, insurance claims, government sites such as SafetyGate in the EU or saferproducts.gov in the USA. Often safety issues first emerge as quality concerns that later turn into near misses or actual incidents. It's critical to monitor these channels for trends and spikes, though sometimes a single safety incident is enough to pull the trigger and report and/or recall a product. Rapid removal of products upon receiving notice from a regulator is again necessary but not sufficient to protect consumers from unreasonable risk of harm. Sometimes extraordinary corrective actions are required to spur consumer response, particularly for low-cost items. One way to begin to close some of the gaps is to strengthen education and training for manufacturers and suppliers. Brands, retailers, and e-commerce platforms need a way to train their supply chains on what is required to access their markets. Third-party labs and joint efforts with regulators can be a good way to deliver this type of training. I saw this used to great effect in the wake of the 2007 toy recalls for magnets and lead paint. The major brands, alongside toy industry associations and regulators from the USA, Europe, and China, all came together to hold training sessions for manufacturers. In addition, joint training sessions were held between the CPSC and AQSIQ to help train local inspectors and lab personnel about the new requirements under the then fledgling CPSIA. It was a period of global collaboration, and to a very large part, it worked. Now, nearly 20 years later, accountability gaps still exist across complex supply chains. Recent enhancements to European regulations go a long way to reduce some of those gaps. In other jurisdictions, where the legal entity selling products exists beyond the legal reach of regulators, those gaps will continue. And as long as there remain significant differences in standards and regulations around the globe, it will remain difficult to police and therefore difficult to ensure consumer safety. I am hopeful that the recently adopted UN principles for consumer product safety will accelerate the development, alignment, and deployment of compatible product safety standards around the world. How do we close the gaps? I would offer that more regulation may not be the best answer. Stronger enforcement of existing regulations, possibly with criminal penalties, and more training and more awareness programs, including for consumers, might just be a more effective method. Today, most consumers assume that if a product is being offered for sale, it meets all applicable standards and regulations, and it has been evaluated to ensure it poses no unreasonable risks. That isn't an unreasonable assumption, though it does not reflect the current reality, but it should.
30-second check.
Thank you.
Thank you. Perfect ending. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you being with us. I'm now going to ask Mr. Philip Radford. He's the President and Chief Executive Officer of Consumer Reports in the US, an organization where independent testing and advocacy have demonstrated truly how evidence and accountability can drive meaningful improvements in the marketplace. Philip, help us look beyond World Consumer Rights Day 2026. What concrete commitments would you like to see take place?
Thank you for having me, and it's wonderful to be on this panel with so many incredible leaders from around the world. Looking at next year and next Consumer Rights Day, it would be great to see safety by design incorporated by manufacturers. It'd be great to see the digital marketplaces taking real responsibility for every product on their sites. It would be great to see better enforcement, more monitoring of products by governments, and continued improvement of regulations where there are big gaps, whether it's in the supplement industry in the US and we don't know what we're putting on or in our bodies, whether it's in artificial intelligence and the harms that it can pose, or whether it's in certain markets like crypto or other areas that are just not yet regulated enough and not only pose risk to consumers, but also possible systemic risk to the economy. More regulation where it's needed, more enforcement, transparency, and data where it's needed, and then continued work by civil society collectively to expose harms. We recently did a test of protein powders, which many in the US use, found that over half of them had unsafe levels of lead and some had 500% of what you need in a day. There are just so many products out there that are still not monitored or regulated, where consumers deserve choices and information so that they can live healthy, safe, and affordable lives.
That was beautifully put. Phil, we have a board meeting coming up this week for Consumers International. What would you say to the rest of the board members? What should we take as a next step from World Consumer Rights Day ourselves?
Well, I'd say that you're doing a wonderful job. Thank you for putting this on. That was not plugged. And I think for World Consumer Rights Day, we need to continue to elevate these issues. We need to continue to bring together regulators, people with expertise in product testing, people with expertise in standards, people with expertise in engaging civil society to find the harms on the ground and exposing them and bringing them to the attention of companies and governments that can make systemic change. And, these kinds of dialogues and these kinds of relationships are essential for us all fulfilling our missions, which are to make sure that consumers can operate in a marketplace without being worried about their health or their safety or whether they can afford the next product that they buy.
Beautifully put. We've come to the end of our hour together. That has gone by incredibly quickly. I'm incredibly grateful for the speakers who've joined us here and shared their perspective, their ambition, their ideas, their power. We are absolutely thrilled to have had you join us on World Consumer Rights Day, and we hope you stay with us on the journey, not just for product safety, but for all of the consumer rights that we need to build in our modern marketplace. To all of those who are joining from around the world, thank you for your work. We know you do that day in, day out. It's not necessarily always the most glamorous work to do or the most understood. But if there's one thing I know, it's that you can find and work on things that one day get uncovered and understood. And you were right there at the very start. We know that, and we are grateful, and all power to you. Let's all work together to improve product safety around the world. It's the least we can be doing in our modern marketplace. And one last word to say, stay safe, stay well, stay together. Thank you, and onward we go.